Welcome to Slow and Steady, the podcast where you get to follow along as we build products in public. Each week, we'll give you an honest peek into our lives as we share our struggles, our wins, and everything in between. I'm Benedikt, and I'm feeling tired.
I'm Benedicte. Today is February 15th. This is episode number 127, and I am feeling slow. I don't know if that is
Hope
a
you also
feeling,
feel
but
steady.
I don't know how steady I feel. I got my engine going, so that does help me feel like even on weeks where I feel like I've done nothing, at least I can say that I've sent my emails, I've done my stream, and the engine is moving forward, but maybe not so much more.
Well,
But
I mean, that's something. Just,
yes.
I mean, showing up every day or every week or whatever, and doing the things that kind of work or seem to work. I think that's all you need to do.
Yeah, I feel like it's really helped to have that kind of system in place, and also that I kind of trust that it will lead to things, because if I do get up one morning and feel a little out of sorts, or like I don't really know what I should work on, at least I can get those parts done. And then when I've kind of done my email and I've planned my stream and stuff, like other things come out of it, like new ideas, or like, oh, I was supposed to work on that project, or it kind of gives you a way to like ease into the week or the day. So I'm pretty happy with that. But yeah, you had a more productive week, or at least I don't know if it's productive discussing time and dates on Twitter, but did you do anything else?
I mean, last week felt good in terms of it was a deep work week. Like I had several days where I just could get into the code base and just deeply focus on stuff and like get some, I'm about to say meaningful, not entirely sure how meaningful, but I mean, it at least felt good working on those parts and improving that. So for the most part of last week, I've been working on the way we do comparisons in our filter engine that like powers all the search and the UI and the segmentation, all of that. And I basically introduced a new type, data type, a new data type of the type daytime. Well, this is a strange sentence. Whatever.
Not confusing at all.
Not confusing at all. So previously, like, or I mean, even in the foreseeable future, like in our UI, you can only filter by dates. So you can filter by people who signed up today, yesterday, the last week, the last month, whatever. Internally, we store those timestamps down to the, like, with a precision down to the microsecond, I believe. So that weird thing came up where we're now comparing dates from the UI with timestamps in the database. And because the entire thing is basically a little programming language that defines like the conditions, I had to come up with how to compare the dates with the timestamps. And that gets really interesting really fast.
Yes,
because I wasn't quite sure, like, how do you compare a timestamp to a date? And looking at the programming languages, most of them just like set the time for the date to 0, and it's basically the beginning of the day. And that works for some cases, but if you like want to say something like, did this user sign on this date? That doesn't work because they signed up at one time on that date and not at midnight that date. And,
or before that date, which is actually what you're comparing in most programming languages.
Yeah, or before that date, or stuff like that. So it started out mostly with me trying to figure out the system that kind of makes sense. And at some point I was like so confused or like so unsure about like, am I making the right assumptions? Like, is it okay to like when you compare the time with the date, basically think of the date as a range of from like midnight to midnight? I was basically writing all those tests for all the edge cases into the code base and then adjusting the implementation to work that way. But at some point, I wasn't quite sure if like the assumption I'm making are actually reasonable. So I asked the team to basically ask Leo and Jane about their opinions, and it turned into just long 100 message conversation about the essence of dates and times and comparing the two and
and life and the universe and
life and the universe and the answers to everything. And the funny thing was, like, their first gut reaction was one thing, and in the end we agreed on something else, because in the context of this particular example, it makes more sense to treat days as ranges or only look at the date portion of times. So it's essentially the same thing, either compare the range or like cut away the time part when doing a comparison. But it was a fun conversation. And we spent like almost an hour going back and forth about this and like making sure we're on the same page. And that's actually just the thing we want. And I thought it was funny, and just took a screenshot of that first message that had like a couple of teaser questions in there. I posted it on Twitter, and that kind of blew up as well a little bit.
I'm pretty sure it did better than your very like well composed tree tweet thread.
It totally did. It was funny. Like, of course, a lot of people started chiming in, and basically everyone had their own opinion and their own answers to those comparisons. And some of them were just the complete opposite. Like, some said it was like 3 questions. Some said yes, yes, no. The other said no, no, yes.
Yeah, I
and
saw
stuff like that. So that was quite
always,
funny.
I guess it depends, because I think if I'd seen the question, I would have answered one thing, but if you look at UI, I would say something else, because I'm guessing one of your kind of one of the use cases is that you say, I want to see who signed up from Monday to Thursday. And that means that you want the people on Thursday. At least that's what I would want if I did that in the UI. But if somebody just gave me kind of the dates, then maybe I would say, yeah, I just mean like Tuesday and Wednesday. But when it's like in a UI and you click on the first day and you click on the last day, you kind of want the people on that last day as well. So it's different when you look at it just as the programming logic, but then you look at the UI and are like, oh yeah, this does not make sense. Like, we, if somebody says, if I go into my analytics software, like, don't remove whoever visited my site on that day that I selected, which is kind of the same.
And in a way, I mean, that was the little detail that was left out in that conversation or in that initial message, and that I think that caused the most controversy about the entire thing. Like, because there was some context missing from the questions, the debate got pretty heated. And the funny thing was, on Saturday morning, one of our investors saw that tweet on Twitter and was so inspired by it that he turned it into a blog post about the topic. He named it the Kobayashi Maru of comparing dates and times. And basically talked about this a little bit and how there's no right or wrong answer to this and stuff like that. And he also retweeted it. He has good reach, and a lot of people follow him. So more people chimed in, and he also posted it too. He also posted it to Hacker News, and I think the highest it got was number 4 or something like that. And like, it was just.
I mean, if you want to get developers engaged and talkative, throw some daytimes at them.
Totally, yeah. So some, like, from that Hacker News, we link it up in the show notes, but like, there are a couple of highlights in the answers there. I'm just going to read a few because I had so much fun reading them. So one of them was, the questions don't make any sense. Stop trying to ask them. The other one was, I wonder what kind of horrible design decision led to this in the first place. And also what
Creating a
was like
software
very
that handles dates and time. That would be the horrible.
yeah.
That would be the horrible
Yeah.
design decision.
Some was I hate to be that guy, but I think everyone's looking at this wrong, which was kind of the default opinion of everything, of everyone. Like everyone's like, yeah, you are stupid. Like it's that way, and it's not that this way. And so that was kind of fun. And also one highlight was I never understood why programmers have such a hard time with time. It was clearly you haven't done a lot with time then. So yeah. Anyways, this was fun, and I spent a lot of time on Twitter and Hacker News, and I didn't participate much in those conversations because I feel like I don't know, it was more fun this way instead of trying exactly what was going on. But yeah.
And also, you probably wouldn't have gotten to another conclusion spending hours discussing this with random developers on Twitter.
Yeah, especially as a lot of the opinions were like, yeah, this is just stupid. Don't ask that question. Just don't do it. I think there were a couple of people in there that kind of got what this was about, and kind of guessed that this was probably about stuff in a database and queries coming in from the UI. But the majority were like, yeah, this is stupid. Don't do this. You can't compare two different types and stuff like that. So anyways.
But I think it also shows that it's good now you have a team, like you have another developer and you also have Jane. So you actually had somebody to reach out to, because I think, as you said, like working on this on your own, you kind of get, in the end, you're like, does this even make sense? Like which direction am I going? Like what? You can get so into it that you kind of lose the perspective. And then being able to reach out to your team and actually having them interested in like getting consensus is very helpful, because it can get you a little out of your own head and into a practical solution, and not trying to make up how we should work with times from again or whatever.
Totally. I think it was good to reach out to them and just talk this through, because whatever assumption we make now and bake into the code, it's more or less set in stone, because changing that stuff after the fact will be hard when you suddenly change the rules of quote unquote logic. That's poised to cause trouble down the road. So we're trying to get it right the first try. So hopefully we did.
With POW, which is a kind of journal style application, I just stripped it out. I'm like, it's on that day and that's it. But that makes it so, if people start traveling and time zones, and it's like, okay, if I travel to the other side of the world and I want to continue logging my cycle and journal about my cycle, then, my body is still on the other time zone and not the new time zone. But I was like, in the beginning, I was like, that we're not like, that will just have to make do. Like, we're going to work with one, like the whole day is a day. And I'm just stripping out the time from the whole thing. But I ended up having like a serious bug where people over on the the west side of the States were ended up logging on the wrong day, because it turns out, and I can't remember exactly now, but I was using the native date thing in the browser, and it's something with it not using the time. It's like, it's different than you would think. Like, I would think that it was going to use the time zone of the person, but it's not using the time zone of the person, or the other way around. Anyway, I just asked for the time in the browser, stripped out the time and then just saved the date. But then that ended up being like a day forward or backwards. Anyway, and then it kept shifting. So every time they opened, it like shifted because it got the wrong time zone. And I thought I had been smart to just like strip that. But then the time zone bug ended up getting in there. And then when you read on MDN, it's like, notice this function does not work like you would assume, kind of notice, like in the documentation. And I was like, oh yes, should have read that little call out the first time I looked at this documentation.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I think that's hard because it's really hard to document yourself out of something that people just assume. Like, since it had that big call out, I am guessing I'm not the first one that assumed that kind of new date or whatever would include time zone or not time zone or whatever it now does. But it has that big call out. But several of us have still done that mistake, it turns out. So yeah, documenting your way out of something that's weird, it's hard.
Totally, yeah. But I mean, what you just touched on with like just ignoring the time part, that's what we are doing right now, or used to do before like we are rolling out this change. But unfortunately, what I didn't realize is because we're saving stuff as timestamps in the database, when we are basically generating a SQL query and like explicitly typecasting stuff to dates, the database can't use the index for this anymore, unless we specifically create an index on the typecast values. So one of the reasons why we're doing this right now is just like improving database performance, because once we change our comparison to work on the native types that are stored in the database, everything will just be magnitudes faster. I'm also trying to run some validation on this, and it looks like it's at times double the speed and sometimes 10 times the speed of the new queries compared to the old ones. So it's a tedious task doing this, but I think it will worth it. It will be worth it. So yeah, that's the reason why we're doing this. And of course, eventually time zone support, because yeah, just stripping the time doesn't work once you want proper time zone support, even if you're just comparing dates.
Because it's not the same day all around the world. It's weird, but
exactly.
It's not.
Yeah, and the day starts and ends at different times, and crazy stuff. Anyways, so that's what mostly what I've been working on last week. And as I said, I enjoyed like just getting some deep focus time for longer stretches and being able to work on this, because this is one of those problems where you need at least 30 minutes to an hour to just get your brain into it. And if there's an interruption, you have to like jump back out and back in. You're just losing so much context every time. So I really appreciate that that I was able to do this in a focused session. Yeah, and that's basically what I'm working on this week as well, trying to wrap that up. Let's see. So far, so good. I don't think there's a lot missing, but yeah, we have to see how it works out this week with interruptions, stuff like that.
Do you schedule out focus sessions, or do they come to you?
I don't. Like usually we try to keep all of our calls and everything, like all the meetings, at least with external people, on Tuesdays or Thursdays. And with the team, we have a couple of calls on Monday, like for the weekly kickoff and stuff like that. But Wednesday and Fridays, I try to keep open and without any appointments and stuff like that. And usually Thursdays is pretty open as well. So that's my default scheduled focus time. The problem is it doesn't always work like that, because when there's a lot of stuff in customer support that I have to take care of, then of course that takes priority, and I don't get to spend it on the code base. So yeah, I kind of try to schedule it, but it's implicit, like it's not blocked on the calendar. Anyways, talking about the team, unfortunately, we had to let our customer success person go last week, which is a bit of a bummer, because it was kind of nice having someone help out with customer support, and we had like high hopes for getting a good customer success process in place where they would like proactively reach out to customers who just started a trial and get them onboarded. And they're a nice person. They were a nice person. It was nice working with them overall, but we were like the expectations from our side and what we got in return were a little bit misaligned. So unfortunately, it didn't work out. So the team is down to 5 again. But we're hoping to do another hiring round in March and hopefully find someone who can do this. We're also questioning if maybe the description for the role was just like too broad or not focused enough, and maybe we should like hire a dedicated salesperson and a dedicated customer support person instead of like trying to find someone who's a little bit in between and can do a little bit of everything. So yeah, I don't know. Don't have an answer there yet, but that's what's going on that front.
I feel like listeners can chime in here, send us or reply to the tweet for this episode or something on that. Like, have you successfully had a customer support / salesperson, or would you say that is like inherently two different roles that need two different people?
Yeah, that would be interesting. I mean, it sounds like the customer success role is kind of that, but maybe it's just hard finding the perfect candidate for that who can do a little bit of both. But we'll keep trying. I mean, it's not the end of the world. We learned a lot of like what we expected, what maybe people think this is about. So even though it didn't work out, it was a great learning.
It's like putting your software out there in the world and realizing that it's not always used as you intended it to be. Sometimes you just need to test things out to realize what the requirements are.
Yeah, totally. And then 2 other small things from last week. One is we now have a Slow and Steady YouTube channel.
Woohoo!
Thanks for your request. Transistor is now publishing all our episodes to YouTube. Probably not that interesting for listeners right now because apparently they're not listening to it on YouTube. But maybe some people pick it up on YouTube. But we'll see. To be honest, I don't have high hopes. But
if you have a friend who's like not a podcast person and you've been trying to get them to listen to podcast, you can now just tell them to subscribe to our YouTube channel instead, because it turns out that at least the younger generation, I think I've seen even like make music playlists on YouTube. Like they use it as Spotify, which is very confusing for me. But as an old grandmother, almost well, not that, as an older person in tech, middle-aged person in tech, I find that super weird. But I also get it, because if you're already on YouTube all the time and you just want to listen to something, why not press play there? And as long as you have your Bluetooth headphones on, you can walk around the house anyways, right? So
yeah, I mean, we'll see how it works out. It kind of comes for free with the automation on Play, so it's not like this is causing out a lot of trouble and effort. So yeah, why not do it? We'll see how it goes.
And we have 4 subscribers. And one is me, and the other one is you, or
yeah, one is you, one is me, one is user list. Who's the 4th? Interesting.
Who is the 4th? Is that you, there, listener? Let us know if you subscribe.
Probably one of our other accounts that we forgot. Oh, right. I know. It's one of my other accounts. It's the FuntoConf account that's following it. So
okay, nobody is subscribed yet. No, but it's a fun test though, and also, as you said, with Transistor doing this automatically, it's fun to just turn it on and see. And I'll try to also make a playlist over on my Queen channel with some highlighted episodes that might be interesting for the same audience, and that's a way to kind of cross share and get all this content working together.
Right.
Anyway, did you have anything more to say about your week?
The only other thing I want to share is I sent an email to Brian last week, just checking in, and Brian's well. Brian's back in Boulder, and he's loving his new job. So if you were wondering about what Brian is about, is doing these days and how he's feeling. Apparently, all is good, and he's happy at his new role at GitLab. So, just a quick update.
Yeah, and we'll have him back at some point to talk about the board game that since they won that competition. So yeah,
let's see. Maybe we can make it work in a couple of weeks or so. I asked when he's got the time. So
yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's about it from my side. Nothing else happened. I mean, this was plenty. So
I thought it was super interesting. I love this daytime that we can get. So, I mean, when you're creating your own software, you have to be very like high level and see the bigger picture. But sometimes you have to go down and like dig through date time comparison and still stay on task, which is kind of the hard, I guess, some of the harder parts of not just being a developer in a larger team, because then that would be most of your job, right? Just get the issue and then figure out how to solve the issue. But as a developer founder, you have to be able to do both. But anyway, over here in Norway, all restrictions were lifted this weekend. So there has been fun times around town. It was interesting because a friend of mine and I had for weeks actually decided we were going to go out to eat on this Saturday. And then all restrictions were lifted at 10 o'clock that morning. So when we went out, there was like no room anywhere. Like all the restaurants are suddenly fully booked. And because it's been like partly open, but you know, the restaurants have had to have fewer patrons and stuff like that. But now everything was fully booked and filled up. But then I remembered I had to walk past my local cafe restaurant that is kind of my home away from home, and they're a little off the beaten path, so they still had room. So we had some great pizza and wine, and then we went to a bar, and it was it felt good. And I was so hungover on Sunday, I didn't even know where, like, I can't even remember the last time. But because of all this, my sister, who lives in Denmark but was skiing in Sweden, got her GPS suddenly told them that it would be faster to drive through Oslo than just stay in Sweden. And because the border now was suddenly, completely open, and it had been for a couple of days, she was like, I'm in Oslo in an hour. And I was hungover, but I was like, okay, we'll figure this out. And Ula and Lillian was like out ice skating or with his sister. So we like managed to like get everybody on board and went out and had like a really nice family gathering with most of Ula's family and most of my family and my sister. And yeah, it was just like a really good and fun. It was nice to hug my sister. I haven't seen her in 2 years. So that was pretty amazing. Wow. So, because we kind of, as I said, she's in Denmark and our father is in London, and then I'm in Oslo, and there has been restrictions between the Scandinavian countries even. So it's been not as easy as it usually is to travel back and forth. And then, so that was a great weekend. And then before the weekend, I also had some, what can you say, fun, because last episode, I was all about the praise. And it might sound like, I do talk about this praise and try to notice this praise because I do think it's hard to take it in and like internalize it, and also expect that people will like the stuff that I do. And I really noticed that because I think I mentioned that I was waiting for more of a testimonial feedback from my client on the Done For You demo service that I'm kind of launching. It was like they tested kind of that service. And I saw on Tuesday night last week that an email came in from him where it's like, I hope this like is what you were looking for. And then I didn't read more anymore. And then on Wednesday, I binge watched Netflix for like 4 or 5 hours before I managed to open that email, because I don't know why. Like, I didn't think it was going to be bad, but I was like, I just don't want to read this. And then I read it, and it was the perfect testimonial, and everything is good in the world. But it's funny when you notice these patterns in yourself that, like, okay, I obviously have some challenges around feedback. But I have now started asking for it, which is great. So with Korean Ray, it's the kind of same old. I written my emails, I'd done my stream, and I did some more YOLO coding, and I debugged on stream and again. And this time it wasn't a bug, but I did something I didn't really know how to do. But the people who watched like really seemed to enjoy it because they were like, "Oh, it's another great debugging session," in the chat. So I think I'm gonna like take that feedback that people actually like seeing me work through things and talk through things, and that can be beneficial as long as it's within reach, I think, because I think it would be bad if like stream after stream like we didn't figure things out. Like that would end up being kind of a boring thing. But since we usually actually manage to make something that is kind of prepared, and then I YOLO a little bit and it's a little uncertain if we like if I know how to pull this off or not, maybe there's a little like suspense in there, like, and then people cheer you on and come with suggestions and stuff like that. So yes, I think anyway, the streams are still doing well, and we are consistently getting like a little bit more views and people showing up and people chatting in the or interacting in the chat, I guess. And then my big ticket item for this week, I guess, but it was kind of last week, pushed it off to this week, but I've now done it, is to create a draft for the Done For You demo service that this testimonial is for. And it's going to be a part of a Done For You demo. And then I was thinking about the Done For You packages or plugins. But then after our call, or after this recording last week, we talked about also kind of Done For You JavaScript SDKs for services or for SaaSes or services that have an API and would like somebody else to make an SDK. So I'm not sure exactly which one I'm going to go for next, but I realized I didn't have to have them all in place. I could just do the Done For You demo draft first and like get that out there and then kind of add on. So there will be a link in the show notes if you want to give me some feedback on that drafts page, dear listener. And Benedikt also, if he wants to give me some feedback.
Yeah, I'll definitely read through it.
Yeah.
Because you asked me to, and I totally didn't do it yesterday. Sorry.
No. Is that not your job as my co-host? No, I'm just kidding.
You have to respond to everything within 5 minutes.
Exactly. No, so I think I got some really good feedback from somebody I know on Twitter, and also some feedback that this is services that companies are looking for, and that I probably should add written, that I can like give them a demo and also give them, blog post in addition to videos. And I absolutely think that people would want that, but I don't want to deliver that because I am not that fond of writing. But I think if I can give companies the demo and the video walkthrough, as I did for that one client, it's going to be easier for them to write the content themselves, because then they will have something to kind of use as a base for blog posts or support pages or whatever they need, instead of me being the person who has to like write that in their style or for their kind of audience. So hopefully I can get away with not doing it.
I mean, you could also just hire it out and let someone else, like, send them the video and let someone else do the writing. And just price that into the package. I mean,
I could, because I could have it as an add-on, and then, if they add that on, I could go to the other person. I think I know a person actually. Ooh, interesting. Got to be thinking about this. Now I need to do some outreach. Anyway, so not as much done last week as I thought, but also I ended up, I don't know if the theme for last week was drinking, because I also drank earlier in the week. So my friend, who I've mentioned before, who's a nurse and was going to leave for Australia for 1.5 years, and that I've kind of been talking to about getting on board with POW as kind of the customer developer person and kind of content marketing person. When she left, because she's going to Australia and she doesn't have a job in Australia, and I thought that would be a great opportunity to get some free work from her in exchange for something that we haven't decided on yet. But but they tried 5 times. But now they're on the plane. They're somewhere between Norway and Australia. I'm going to give them a week to relax, and then we're going to pick up the thread. But then last week, kind of as the last night before, or the last time we saw each other before we left, we sat outside because they didn't want to. Of course, they were very isolated these last weeks to be able to get to Australia with a clean bill of health and all that. So we had some outside gin tonics and talked POW, and it really, I think we've been talking about it like on and off a little bit, and I do think it's going to could be a great fit because one of the things she wanted to do in Australia is kind of read up on her is it, I guess it's not called craft, like her like nurse content, and she also wants to become a midwife, so she wants to kind of read up and prep for that until she comes back. And like all of that kind of content, especially the midwifery things, you know, are things that could be inspiration for content, POW type content. And also I think one of the reasons she wants to be a midwife too is because that's kind of a coaching role. You coach the person through labor. So I also think that she could be a really good person to talk to customers and kind of try to do those kind of customer interviews and get out of them what they actually want from the product and all of those things that I kind of know how to do, but it's not my genius zone, I would say. So if she could do that, then that could be awesome. So we're kind of like, she said yes. So I'll keep everyone posted on what's happening there. And on the POW side, then, no surprise. As I said, my wild card last week, I applied for Tiny Seed and they said no. But they did say what we talked about, which is like they had a paragraph where it's like, well, we ask for people with like 500 MMR, but now that you've applied, we'll keep looking. No, what did they say? But like we'll have an eye on your product. And I was like, yes, that's all I needed. I needed that sentence, and we're gonna get there by next year. Yeah.
Cool. Well, sorry that you didn't get into Tiny Seed, but still.
Yeah, I'm not surprised and not that sad either.
That's a good way to think about it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but I think it could be fun. Like, I'm really excited. I did fix a bug in POW last week. Oh, I forgot that. I fixed a bug in POW last week. See, this is why this podcast is good. I did do stuff last week. I didn't just drink and watch Netflix and hide from feedback, which was kind of how I viewed my week until I now managed to talk through it a little bit. I fixed a little bug in POW, and it was a lot of fun coming back to the project because I don't know, when I kind of left it, I felt like everything was like, oh, this is bad in a way, or like I wasn't happy with the code base, I wasn't happy with the product, and I was like, argh! But now when I came back to it, I was like, well, this wasn't that bad, this structure worked, like I could come back to it pretty fast. And also, logging in and testing out the kind of sign up flow again, I'm like, yeah, there is room for improvement, but it's not kind of as bad as I've managed to make it in my mind when I was like all in there, like you were with the daytime. I was like so in there, I kind of forgot to see the larger picture of the state of the app. So that was I was really happy that was the kind of feeling I came out after fixing that bug. I was like, oh, this is actually like better than I've made it out to be in my head, and that's good. Going into working some more on POW. Hopefully this spring when the sun is out, because the sun is out in Oslo and it's good times.
When the sun is out, you're going to spend it inside in front of your computer. Is that what you're saying?
You know what? I am really good at coding outside. I've done a lot of.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Well, I don't know anymore now
at all.
Because after everything closed down and I couldn't go outside, I realized that, or couldn't go outside to work, I ended up buying an external monitor. So I've never had an external monitor before. Always just worked on my laptop because I wanted to kind of keep that identity that, like, if I wanted to, I could just like go to Bali or wherever and work and be a digital nomad. which hasn't been kind of true because I have family obligations in this country and I kind of have to stay. So when we were also not allowed to go to, cafes anymore to work, I ended up buying an external monitor. So I might have gotten too used to it. We'll see come spring if I manage to get coding work done at my favorite home away from home, the local coffee shop, or I've also worked from the park when I was younger, and also from the beach actually, or like not the beach, but the one of the piers that you can swim off of in Oslo. So we'll see. I'll try to change it up a bit because it's good for my mental health, even though maybe I don't code.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a little slower. Maybe it's not as productive. But if it makes you happy, maybe that makes you more productive. I don't know.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
For some reason, that doesn't work for me at all. Like, I've never been able to work at coffee shops or any, like, even with, I mean, other people around don't bother me, but like, if it's too busy, then I have a hard time focusing and staying productive. So unfortunately, I can't really relate to that. Working outside at a park sounds horrible to me.
But I remember that you and Brian couldn't work from bed either. Like, you are very strict in your work environments.
Yeah, for some reason. Yeah, like, I mean, I can certainly open up the computer in bed, but I will not be very productive, that's for sure. So I don't know, if I want to be productive, then I have to get to my desk in front of my external monitor and like work there and focus there. Otherwise, it doesn't really work.
Yeah, I think it's because it's a little bit, if you're used to the queue. So the queue is sitting down and the external monitor, and that's kind of your cue for deep focused work. Then it's hard to kind of break out of that, and that's what's going to be interesting for me now that has become kind of the cue. But for a while, I had some playlists that I usually coded with, and wherever I was, as long as I just turn on that and like open my code editor, that was kind of my cue to get into kind of the deep coding work. And then it didn't really matter as much where I was or who was around. But streaming is going to be harder. Like, if we go to our summer house this summer, I think I'll take a break from streaming because it's going to be harder to stream with only one monitor now. I did it in the beginning. I only streamed with my laptop, but we'll see. I mean, got to keep it a little loose. I mean, we can't be, or you do you, but I have to stay a little loose. Otherwise, I think I'll.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's all for this week. That was kind of productive. Slow, I guess, was my feeling.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to add, so I guess that's a wrap for this episode.
See you around the interwebs.
Yeah, bye.